In this lesson, we're going to continue to work with lights in Redshift for Cinema 4D. In the previous lesson, we talked about some techniques that we can use, like the three-point lighting, and how to set up a really basic illumination using the area lights, the point lights, the spotlights, and the infinite light, and the dome light. So we can use a combination of these, and we can turn them really easily on and off from the objects panel on the right, and we can see what changes in real time here using the render viewer in Redshift or the viewport, the 3D viewport. Now we can also deactivate the real-time render once we were satisfied with the basic and quick rendering and we want to go into a more advanced one. I suggest you do that because if you start already with a heavy rendering, sometimes it's going to be too slow. So start with the real-time rendering and then turn it off and start to see an improvement, some improvements on the scene. Now I want to show you here also, again, from this file that we used from the previous lesson, which is the statue. I want to show you how you can improve it maybe a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to go in the materials and I want to create a new material, Redshift material, of course. So that's one way you can do it, through the menu, the Redshift menu. And we can click and drag this directly onto the background. Why? Because that's the default material. It's not really a Redshift material. So it's better probably to use a Redshift material rather than a like standard Cinema 4D. But standard Cinema 4D materials also work. So you can see if I open up the material content here, the material panel, we can see that this is a Redshift material called RS standard. And it's a pretty gray material. So I can increase here and make it pretty white. Now, usually I don't use the extreme white color, but usually like a shade of gray. But we can try and see what happens here with the white background. And so if I go again back to the Redshift menu and run again the viewer, we will see probably that, yeah, you can see this is brighter than the previous render. And we can also see some lights reflected onto the background of our studio, of our 3D studio. Why? Because this is a reflective material. It reflects lights. So it's a little bit shiny. It's not completely rough. So if I don't want to see the lights reflected, what I can do is go in the light settings and go in the details of the light here. And this is the point light we use for the background. And we can change here in the details panel, we can change the softness of the shadows. If you think the shadows are still too sharp, you can adjust them using the softness. As also we saw, we can adjust the transparency and the size. And then in the reflection, we're going to drop down this value to 0. Dropping down the value to 0 will make that reflection not visible in the render. So if I render again, you can see now the little dot on the left side, in this case, is disappeared. We still have this one on the right side, so we can do the same thing on this light, and we can do it real time. That's the beauty of Redshift and similar render engines. We can do it real time, and you can see the effect there. The light just disappeared from the reflection on the background. We're still seeing the key light, so I want to adjust also the key light here. I want to drop down the diffuse. If I drop down the diffuse, that's gonna eliminate the diffuse effect, which is the more important of a light, and it's gonna keep the reflection effect. So maybe we want to do the opposite. We want to drop down the reflection and increase the diffuse. So you can see as I increase the diffuse, I get more lighting from the key light. As I decrease the reflection, I start to see the reflection disappear. So you can adjust all these parameters here. Transmission is for transparency, and then we have subsurface scattering, and global illumination also is really important because it participates to the overall lighting effect. And again, we can adjust the softness here of the key light, and I can make them a little less sharp. You can see there the shadows are pretty visible. These are the only sharp shadows in the scene that I wanted to maintain. All the others have been blurred out or are not visible because the light is too big or the shadow is transparent. So you can see we are starting to fix things a little bit. Now let's go back to the materials. Let's create a new material, not a standard, but a material. Now you can see this one, it's called actually RS material, so REDSHIFT material. The previous one was RS standard. So they're a little bit different from one another, but they're gonna look pretty much the same. So if I drag and drop this onto the statue, you can see it's gonna be darker because this is a darker shade of gray. And so I can go here in the color and adjust it right away. There you go. Now this is of course easier if you know Cinema 4D. If you don't know Cinema 4D, you can check the Cinema 4D video course in the channel. So now that we're using Cinema 4D Redshift materials, we are starting to see things looking a little bit better than before. And these are just basic materials without any texture. So they're already starting to look better, and they look more shiny, and they have a better effect overall. Now, this is the model we taken from the, Sketchfab, and we used also in the previous lesson. Well, in Sketchfab, we saw that this file also contains textures. We can see some textures here that are used for creating more details on the surface and creating, more realism and not having like a flat color material. So where do we find them? Well, in the same folder where we find the 3D object, we also find the textures. Now, one quick way to create a texture material is to just click it and drag it onto an RS material, existing RS materials, say yes, and that's supposing to generate a new material. So it's going to create a new material. If it's not visible, it's because it's rendering the material. So perhaps it could help to stop the interactive rendering. So if I go again in the render viewer, there you go, now it appears. So if it doesn't appear, maybe it's because you're rendering already with the IPR rendering or real-time rendering. So you may want to stop that or pause that. Now I'm going to click and drag this to apply it to the statue, and let's open again the render viewer. Now you can see that the statue is getting better and better. Now I can see a nice texture with a lot of details already. So it's not looking as flat as before. And even though we didn't work with the 3D model, it's still looking better when we use materials. Now, if we go here, we can also go and create a material, standard material, classic material. And this is the classic material of Cinema 4D. You can see it's looking a little bit different. We can see some white areas here and there, but we can try to apply the texture right here in the material. So double click the material, go in the color and apply the texture. And again, this is, things that we do normally in Cinema 4D. So if you don't know, again, Cinema 4D, you may want to check it out. So I'm applying also the normal. The normal will give me some extra 3D superficial, like fake effects, but it's going to make the 3D object look more detailed and better and better. So we compare the three different main possibilities here using the classic Cinema 4D material, using the Redshift standard, reusing the Redshift material, which again are pretty similar to each other. Now you can see that the statue is looking pretty good. Now, if we go back now and add a dome light, so back to the lights, we add a dome light, and let's increase the intensity a little bit. Okay, it's not visible. So if it's not visible, let's work with the transparency, because that dome light is actually outside. So outside the box, we use the box for our studio. So to make the dome light go through the box, we need to decrease the transparency of the shadows. So in that way, the light is going to go through. And then I'm going to increase the key light a little bit because this was too dark. So darker materials, they may need some extra lining like this. So this looks really nice at the moment. We can definitely see the key light, the fill light, the backlights also. And so it's a good combination. So you can see this is a room, but it's a completely closed room inside a box. So we need to, if you want to use like external lights, they need to have transparency, a lower transparency for the shadows. Now let's go back to Redshift lights, and I want to undock this again and dock it there on the top so we can see everything. We talked about infinite light, point light, spotlight, area light, dome light. Now we're going to talk about IES lights. But before we do that, there are some extra things you can do with the area lights that I want to show you. Some extra, let's call it effects. Kind of a noir movie effect or like mystery movie effect. We can use lights to generate, some really nice atmosphere. And all I'm doing here is turning off the other lights because I want to concentrate on one. That's an important suggestion I gave you also other times, because it's really important to isolate the light you're working with to see what's going to happen using that single light. Now you can see I'm making this area light pretty long and thin, and I can rotate it now a little bit because I want that light to point towards the statue and from the top like this. Now we can see a preview on the Cinema 4D 3D view. And now I want to use a cloner in the MoGraph menu. The cloner is an object, well, actually it's a modifier in Cinema 4D that lets you generate copies or instances of the same object. I want to change from grid to linear because I don't want to have like bidimensional copies just on one direction like this. And now we have the first 3 copies. Now I can increase the amount to whatever I want. I can put like 100 if I want. I can change the offset and I can change the spacing amount. So you will see what's going to happen here. I'm creating basically a multiple light effect. So you can either copy and paste lights if you want to work with them like independently, or you can use instances or clones like this. So you only need to modify one to modify all the others. That's a quicker way to work with multiple lights. And let's see what effect we generated. Also, the spread, I want to put it to 0. And you will see what's going to happen. I just need to run the render. I don't want these lights to be visible at the moment, so they're just gonna emit light, but they're not gonna be visible. Only they will be visible on the subject like this. So you can see the effect is like the blinders of a window projecting on the statue. So it's really cool, again, like noir movies, detective movies, or TV shows like that use this to create some sort of window effect, kind of a mystery effect. Now we can adjust now the count. We can modify the number of copies. We can move the cloner around. Be careful, you don't need to move the light. For the movement, you move the cloner. If you want to adjust the light effect, this is the single one, by the way. So it's a single beam of light. And then if I increase the count, you will see that once it's refreshing, you will see there you go, the other copies. So let's put like 15. So if I go and select the original one, the first one, if I modify that, I can change the size of this effect. I can change the color. Can go back to the color. I can adjust the spread. If I increase the spread, you will see I get another effect. So if you want to have that precise beam of light and with the precise shape, you need to decrease the spread down. Now I want to get another model here. I want to insert also a person, a character. So I'm going to go to renderpeople.com. This is a website that gives you some objects, well, some models of characters free, and you can choose Cinema 4D, so you can open directly in Cinema 4D. First, you need to extract the folder that you download. Once it's extracted, you double click inside and you'll find other, well, these are other zipped folders, so you need to extract again, right click, extract, And once you're inside, you'll find the various models here in Cinema 4D with the textures, but we need to pick one. You can see we have Corona with Corona render, native, or V-Ray, or other render engine. What we want is to use the native. If you're interested in Corona, Octane, V-Ray, you'll find them in the channel as well. So I'm gonna click and drag this inside Cinema 4D. It's gonna open up the model here with the texture already, with the material already, that it's usually it's automatically turned into Redshift. And then I'm gonna open it, sorry, I'm gonna copy and paste. So Control C, Control V inside my scene, and we can read there the name of the material. So it's either converted automatically in Redshift or it's a standard Cinema 4D, but you can see it's still visible, so we can definitely use it as this. And then we want to position this a little bit differently. Now I want to turn on the box of the room again, and let's run around a render. So now we're not running an isolated effect, but we can see now the room. Now I changed the color a little bit and the camera position, but I'm still using only the area light multiplied with the cloner. I have the statue there with the material, and I have the new person in there. I want to add another area light. I want to bring it here to the front of the statue. You can see it's pretty bright. So what I want to do now is work with shapes. Shapes are a way to make your light visible. So let's make this light red again, or maybe something a little bit more pink. And if I go down, you can see I can change the shape. Let's make this a sphere. And then I want to adjust the size. I want to make a small sphere. I can do it with the yellow dots in the view, or I can use these parameters right here, size, x, epsilon, and z. So I can make this a small sphere, let's say around 30 centimeters or 20 centimeters, something not too big, kind of an actual lamp. You'll see probably in some hardware stores some spherical lamps. Well, this is a way you can simulate a spherical lamp. Now, we are only seeing the effect and the reflection of that lamp. We are not actually seeing the emitting object, the emissive object. So if I turn on visible, there you go. Now you can see that that light is actually visible in the scene. So let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's make it 40 centimeters. And there you go. It's actually a sphere of light, kind of a real object inside my scene. Now, if I want to see more the color, I need to decrease the intensity and the exposure. So the color is gonna be more visible, as you can see. Now I want to make this a little bit bigger so we can see better. And I just close the material panel because we're gonna talk about materials later on. We're gonna concentrate more with lights here, even though we adjusted some materials. So now you can see the sphere of light is actually there. It's not just the light effect. So when you work with lights, first of all, you need to place the redshift lights. Second, you need to make the device visible. So you can simulate a device using a shape and a visible shape. Here I'm copying this area light, so Control C, Control V. Let's run a real-time render, so it's gonna be a little bit faster, and I'm gonna also make an undersampling here. So it's gonna be faster. It's gonna be way more approximate and not as beautiful as the previous one, but we can see what's happening faster. So here I want to change the color first. So that's another area light, spherical area light. Now I want to change the size, the shape. So I want to change, make it like a rectangle. And that's the standard one. So let's wait to, if it doesn't refresh automatically, you can click on refresh. There you go. Now that's the area light pointing towards the statue. Now there is another option we have, which is bi-directional, and that's gonna emit lightning, photons on both sides of that surface. Again, if it doesn't show, just refresh. And now we can see that's a flat emissive device. Again, if you want to simulate a different type of light. And I'm gonna copy this again, Control C, Control V, move it here, and now let's see another one, which is going to be the disk. So select the disk, and there you go. And also want to change again the color a little bit so we can distinguish that. And now I have already the bidirectional on, so that's fine. So it's emitting on both sides. And now the last one, which will be, I'm going to do another copy, Control C, Control V. Last one is going to be the cylinder. So I'm going to change this, make it a cylinder, and it's not oriented the way I want it. So I'm just going to rotate it, rotation, and going to rotate it vertically because it's a hollow cylinder that's emitting light all around. So kind of a different, kind of a LED stripe or a LED cylinder or a neon light. So I want to make the Z size higher because I want a high, like tubular shape, and then really thin, like again a LED stripe or a neon tube light. And there you go. It's pretty high actually, so I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. And you can see now, if I turn off the real-time renderer, I can see better the effects of the various lights I've just created. If I turn on the real-time, it's gonna be more approximated but faster. Now what I want to do is go here in the mesh, create a text mesh inside, as we did in first lesson, type REDSHIFT, and I want to use this text as an emissive device, as a lighting device. So I want to turn an object into a lamp, an entire object. And the text is one of the more complex shape you can create in Cinema 4D because it contains a lot of letters. So you either create some primitive or you can create something more complex. Anything you create can be turned into a light using the mesh feature that I'm going to show you. So I want to push this up there, position this. Now the important thing you will see is we need to have an actual mesh. This is not a mesh. This is kind of a parametric object that you can change anytime. So if you go back in the text, you can change the letters and everything else. Now I'm going to copy and paste and create another copy of that original area light. And I'm going to change from cylinder, I'm going to change it to mesh. So that's the last one that we can use with the area light. Now with the picker, I need to click on the object that I want to transform into a light. So you can see that if I go on the statue is going to be transformed into a light. But I want to use the text. Now nothing is stopping yet. You can see the text is not actually emitting light, and it's not because of the intensity. Let's go back to real-time render. Now the problem here, on the standard IPR rendering. The problem here is that we need to turn the text, right-click and turn the text into an actual polygonal object. Now you can find a button here on the right side. Usually it was on the top, but now it's on the right side. All of these buttons here originally were at the top of Cinema 4D, but now are on the right side. You can always change them. And down here at the bottom, you'll find the make editable. So that's going to turn any primitive into a mesh object. But right now, let's see what's happening. So I'm going to expand the hierarchy, and there you go. These are not yet meshes, but these are extrusions of curves. So I want to turn those into actual meshes. I'll select everything here, right click and select current state to object. That's another way you can change and make them there you go. So they are now meshes, but it's still not visible because they're kind of separated. So we need to reassign, and also we need to join them together. So another way we can do this is to select everything again and right click and do connect objects, and we can also delete the original. So now we have one mesh. So let's call this something else. Let's call this text. And now I need to reassign. So we go back into the area light, go back into the mesh setting. So shape, mesh, click on the picker, click on the text. You can also click it directly in the objects panel. And there you go. Now it's visible. So remember that, yeah, you can use anything and make it a lamp or a neon sign like this with the text. But the important thing is that you have an actual mesh, not like some extrusion or parametric object. It needs to be a plain, simple mesh. And now we have all the effects now, really beautiful. Now I want to show you another one, and it's going to be the IES light. That's good for interiors. So it creates basically an advanced spotlight effect instead of the standard spotlight. So when you click on the IES light, well, first of all, is not gonna be, usually it's not gonna be placed correctly. It's gonna point like horizontally. So we'll place this near a wall because that's the better way we can see the actual effect. If you are far from a surface, far from a wall, well, that's not gonna be really visible. So usually you use the IES lights near a wall because you want to see the light diffusion on the wall. And this is again not rotated usually in the correct way, so you need to rotate it. So let's go back in the attributes here, and let's see here. Okay, yeah, it's similar to the other lights, so it has colors, anything else, but it has this IES profile setting on the object panel. This is where you need to bring in your IES file. Now, if we search for IES in the content browser, we have it, but also you can get it from the web. So if I search for IES lights on the web, you find websites where you can download the packages containing usually a series of different effects. These are the IES effects. Now, if we go down in the content browser, you'll find them also in the content browser. And I think there are like thousands of these here. So there's no really need to go on the web unless you're looking for something specific, because otherwise you'll find like, again, thousands of different spotlights effects. So they change basically the shape they emit. It's not a simple cone of light, but it contains like some effects like reflection. So these are looking good. Let me get one of these. So I'm going to click on the little cloud button, click and drag the IES file directly in there. So you can do this if you use the content browser. Otherwise, use the folder, search in your computer, and apply the IES effect. Now, to see this, we need to run again the render viewer. And I want to do here like a region because I only want to concentrate in there. So I'm going to click on region, going to concentrate only on that part. And you can see it's looking not really as it's supposed to. But again, that's because it's not oriented properly. So I'm going to use the rotation. I'm going to rotate here the light how it's supposed to. So I'm going to rotate it and pointing towards the ground. So let me show you here. There you go. I'm going to rotate this. You can see the line. Just make sure the line is pointing downward, and we can start to see something there on the wall. You see the effect, but it's also projecting shadows from the text there. So let's adjust this a little bit more. And also from the side, you can see it's not perfectly straight. So make sure it's straight down like this. There you go. Now we still see on the region a little bit better, but we can still fix it. And we also have another wall actually. So I'm gonna copy and paste this onto the other wall. And perhaps you can try also different effects. So you can download more of these and then click and drag them and quickly substitute the IES effect and see the changes directly in the real-time renderer. And again, as usual, you may want to turn off other lights or other objects to concentrate on that single effect. And then you may want to turn everything on again when you think you got the correct IES effect. Now I want to copy this in the other wall because we have less objects in that other wall so we can see it better. So I'm gonna copy this and move it on the other wall. I'm gonna use the world coordinates, and if it's going too slow, we need to stop the real-time render. Okay, let me move this, and now we can see the effect a little bit better there on the other wall. It's not a great IES effect, this one, so I may want to try with some other. So let me see here if I can try with another. But anyway, you can try, many times. Also try to bring it closer to the wall, make sure it's pointing down, and try to experiment with other effects. Now I want to create another area light, and I want to simulate that spotlight, because the IES, just like the spotlight, it's coming usually from the ceiling. So when you're doing an interior, you either like import a lamp model, 3D model, or you can simulate the light, usually also with a single disc shaped area light. So I want to make this really small, and I want to bring this in on the top of that IES light. So I want them to be aligned. So I need to check here on the side view and on the top view. So you want to bring it directly on the top. So the IES light is not possible to make it visible. So one is the IES light that is creating the effect. The other one is going to be the disk light that is actually making the light visible as a little spot on the ceiling. So that's one way you can, again, simulate lamps or devices that are emitting those lights. So I'm rearranging here a little bit, and we can see now the effect of the IES light a little bit better. And we can also see that the two little discs representing the spotlight on the ceiling, you can see 1 and 2, they're really small. We can also see them reflected on the background, so we can either keep them the reflection, or we can turn the reflection off, as we saw before. Now here I chose quick shading on the viewport, so it's going to be quicker, and I want to use now another object, another model. So I want to use an actual lamp downloaded here from the asset browser. Again, I want to bring it in, so you can use any lamp, ground lamps or ceiling lamp, whatever. So you can actually have the device itself, not just a quick representation of the device, which could be a spotlight or a lamp or whatever. I have some problem here with the ground, so maybe want to turn that. I want to push down the ground a little bit. Okay, now let's focus on that lamp. So you can either simulate a lamp using a shape like we did with the area light, or you can use the actual bulb object of this 3D model. Or actually, if you want to be even more precise, in reality, the lights is coming from a little wire inside the bulb. So you can use also that to emit light. Here in this model, they're using a light, which is not going to be visible or not properly. Yeah, there you go. It's looking more like an emissive material rather than a light. So I'm going to delete that light. I'm going to use a redshift light. So when I delete that light, everything is going to be turned off. So I can use directly the bulb if I want to like simplify the effect. So I'm going to use an area light, and I'm going to use a mesh effect and click on that. Now make sure also it's visible, otherwise it's gonna disappear. And now I can only see, well, actually I've applied to the little wire. You can see that's the most advanced effect. This is how it's supposed to look, using the little wire. Or we can use the light bulb, or actually we can even use the external cone of the light. So if I go back here and I click, I can select like the top part of the light or the bulb or the wire, depending if I want to simplify the effect or if I want to look like in reality. Now, let me show you here. There you go. Now it disappeared again because we need to remember, we need to turn on the visible feature. So turn on visible, and now you can see I've applied to the bottom of the lamp. And I'm gonna decrease the intensity. There we go. So click again the picker, I can assign it to the top of the lamp. And again, this is kind of a simplification of the effect. Or I can assign it inside using the wire or the bulb. Now I think the bulb will be enough. So if I move far from the lamp, you can see the effect. It's looking pretty good. Now the last option we have is to actually use like a disk of light. So let me increase the intensity here. And also in this case, okay, that's is too much, I think. Oh, I was outside. So I'm gonna go closer. Now the problem here is that it's pointing the light. Oh, actually it was outside. So I wanna bring it in inside the lamp. So I will make this smaller. And let me use the other views and make this area light, disk light smaller, put it inside. We can start to see the effect there, but it's not correct. I need to rotate this 90 degrees. And now let's go here back on the light settings, and let's do also bidirectional. We don't care if it's visible because it's inside the lamp, but it's more important that it's double-sided. And there you go, that's a good effect. Now we can always adjust the intensity, we can always adjust the exposure, we can always adjust the shadows. Remember that transparent shadows will give you more light around because they will pass through the object. So if you go to details, you increase transparency, the light is gonna pass through the top of the lamp and it's gonna go all over the place. So sometimes it's better because we have like translucent materials on lamps. So this will be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. Please support us if you want to thank us with joining the channel. And so that's it for this lesson experiment, and see you in the other lesson.